Hey Book Dragons, I'm back. I am here today to do my April reading wrap up. Now normally in the month I do a mid-month reading wrap up, but honestly this month I just didn't have the best reading month and I only read 11 books. I tend to struggle when I read for like individual readathons where like it's not team, it's not competitive based. I just tend to be less motivated, and this month I had a lot going on, so reading fell by the wayside and I wasn't picking up very good books or books that I wanted to read, and I think that was mostly due to the prompts that I got chosen for Aurelium. Like there was so few things that like fit all the prompts and I think I was struggling a little bit. But yeah, let's get into it. We will chat through it and then we will kind of, oh sorry, I really zoomed in. And then we will kind of chat through everything that I read. I'll give you guys my ratings, we'll do stats, and we'll do all those fun things. But yeah, I didn't have the best reading month. I only had 1 5-star. So let's talk about the stats first, and then we'll get into the books. So I read 11 things in the month of April. One, I'm gonna count it as read because I did read it, but I wound up DNFing it. It was like, I got like to 550 pages and I just could not do it anymore. So I'll talk about that when I get there. So I really read 10 things. I read 3,948 pages. My average page count a day was 131, which is actually pretty good for me. It's like right on average. My average page count was 358. My most read book was YA Fantasy, which is very, very good. I read 3 books with rep and 4 from authors that I read before. My bookstore rating, I read 1 5-star. I read 4 5. Okay, I read 1 5-star, 4 4-star. No, wait, 5 4-star. 4 3-star and 1 2-star, and I had 0 1-stars, and I had an average rating of 3.5. So yes, that is that. New release, I read 7 books. Definitely a very, very high release like month of like books that I read that were new, which maybe had mixed results. We will see. I read 2 backlist and 2 from last year. I read 8 physical. I only read 2 audiobooks, and again, I think that's why my listening was so little. Like my amount was so little. I didn't listen to any audiobooks this month. Really, mixed media, I read none. I read 1 ebook, which is 1 arc, and then I read, yeah, it was definitely a heavy physical month. I started 2 series. I continued in 1. I completed 0. I caught up with 1. I read 8 standalone, and 0 anthology. The way I got the books. Hold on 1 second. My mom needs to ask me a question. Okay. What happened? Sorry. I told them that I was gonna film, so she's just gonna have to go in the cage for a couple minutes. She will be fine. She'll eventually fall asleep because she's super tired. So again, sorry, I don't know where I left off, but the first book I picked up was Prom Chanted by Morgan Matson. This is the book that I had to read for the prompt that like has a circle on the cover. I think it's Alchemy, if I'm remembering correctly. But I thought this one was super fun. I haven't read anything by Morgan Matson in a while. This is her first book with Disney. It's also a retelling, which I don't often read. And I go to ALA every single year, and a big chunk of the books I get are these. I think I'm probably going to put this in my classroom because I don't think I'm gonna keep it. I liked it. I thought it was super fun, but you basically follow these 2 characters. They're going to LA. They go to their prom. After prom, they go to like Disney, and they kind of get sucked into the Sleeping Beauty story. It's a little bit of a grumpy sunshine story, with the grump being the girl and the sunshine being the boy. And you also have a very like Disney obsessed boy and a girl who's like kind of over it, and it's just very, very cute. It was fun. It was very, very predictable, but it was a fun read. If you're looking for kind of a unique take on a fairy tale story, I'd pick it up. And also it's great, it has prom vibes. Perfect for this time of year, which is probably why it came out at this point. And the next book that I read was another one that just didn't hit as well for me, I will say. And this was for another prompt. I don't remember what the prompt was, but I had to read a prompt that was based on like someone recommended you a book based on your birth sign. I'm a Leo, and the only book like in any of those lists that seemed remotely interesting to me, other than just to read like a YA fantasy, which I thought was too broad, was Mr. Penundrum's 24-Hour Bookshop. Here is a photo. And this this was sort of a lit fic thriller, I would say, and I just didn't feel connected to any of the characters. I'm gonna say that a lot this month. I had a lot of issues feeling connected to characters like this whole month. My grandma passed away this month, so my mom was gone a lot of the month, and I just like, it just messed with my brain because I was, you know, it was just a busy month. So that was kind of where I just could not feel connected to any characters that I read, which was upsetting. But I just didn't feel that connected. It was a fun story. It was interesting, but it didn't capture me. It didn't pull me in. It was a quick listen. It was one of the few audiobooks I listened to this month, but nothing that like grabbed me. So I don't really have many thoughts other than it was a book and I read it. I know people adore this story. The mystery was a little bit confusing for me to follow, and I didn't feel that connected to the characters. So that's why it only got a 3-star for me. And then the next book that I read was actually one that was probably one of my favorites of the month. I have 2 books that I really love this month, and these probably are them. So ASAP by Axio is the sequel to XOXO, and I thought this one was so fun. It was really, really cute. If I'm just rating on vibes, this is like definitely going to be a 5-star, but I think I gave it 4-star. I thought it was a fun read. It follows Sori and Nathaniel. You saw them in XOXO, and this is their romance, and it was just very, very cute. It was very, very diverse. It also dives into the K-pop scene. You saw these characters in book 1, and I just loved it. You also get to see the characters from XOXO, and I had a really enjoyable time. It was a super sweet romance. This was also for a prompt. I had to read a book that was my favorite color. My favorite color is blue. There we go. And I just had a fun time. If you're looking for a super cute romance that kind of does deal with harder topics, I'd pick it up. I had a really, really fun time with this one. And it is a second chance Friends to More romance, which is definitely my favorite. I only enjoyed XOXO, but this one is definitely the far superior book in my opinion. But then again, I really like that trope. And the next book that I read was another book for the Magical Readathon, and it's Deep is the Fen by Lily Wilkinson. I will attach a photo here. I was also on a blog tour for this for TBR and Beyond, and I got an ARC from them, so thank you so much. I like this book. I felt sort of how I fed when I read Hunger of Thorns. I think these books are so long, and I almost feel like I'm reading 2 separate books that kind of get shoved together. This book follows a main character has like, she has some sort of magic, but her best friend kind of gets sucked up into this magical cult, and she's kind of works to get him out of that environment, and that's kind of where we are. But I kind of felt like the first half of this book and the second half of the book were 2 different books, and they kind of got shoved together. And it wasn't my favorite. I liked it. It was a book and I read it. I gave it 3.5 stars, but it just wasn't my favorite. I felt like the world was interesting and the characters were interesting, but they didn't mesh well. I didn't feel that connected to the characters. Again, story of my month. So yeah, I only gave that book like 3.75. I think I rounded up to 4. The next book I read was my DNF, but I counted it because I listened to so much of this book, and it's 637 pages. That is Northern Lights by Nora Roberts. I'll attach a photo here. If you don't know, I am a part of Jess from Peace to Love Books, her Patreon, and we read a Nora book every single month, and I just love Jess. Like, I love Jess, I love Tori. If they do something, I probably am gonna participate just because they're so fun. I'm so close to maybe meeting them in August. Just keep your fingers crossed that they open up steamy lit tickets, because I would love to get to go to meet them because they just seem so cool on the internet, and I would love to meet them in person. Knowing me, I'd probably fangirl like a ridiculous amount, but that's okay. But this book just was boring to me. Like, I've liked other Noras, I've DNF'd some, but this one just was boring. But I wanted to go to the live show so bad, and I stopped with it, and then I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I went to the live show, saw them all say how boring it was, and then I just kind of gave up on it. It also had a male lead. It was set in Alaska. All of these things sound so unique. Altogether, the story was just so boring. I'm sorry, I just couldn't do it. So I counted it as a book that I read on Goodreads because I read so much of it. I really DNF'd it. I make the rules. I'm allowed to do that. So really only read 10 books this month, but we'll count the 11 just because I listened to so much of this book. Okay, and then the next book that I read was my only official 5-star of the month, and that is The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. I adored this book. I devoured this book. I read this book in about a week. I literally probably could have read this book in a day if I had the time and the resources. If I picked this up on like a day off, I literally would have read the whole book in a day. I love this book. It is a mystery, and it's a mystery with characters that I adored. I loved, what is her name? I love Lucy so much. Lucy is in a bit of a bad space. She's working for a school and she kind of becomes connected with this little boy named Christopher, and her lifelong dream is to adopt Christopher. But she is not in a financial situation to be able to do this, and she feels so guilty. So one day she kind of gets invited to go to this competition that is connected to this author. And there's a big prize at the whole end, and if someone solves all these riddles, they get a prize, which is basically this book that they will sell to the publisher, and she will it will be a lot of money, because this author is very beloved, but he hasn't written a lot in the last couple of years, so everyone's hunting for this book, and she is kind of forced to go on this adventure, this mythical, these clues, the scavenger hunt to try to get this book, and it is a heartwarming story. It's all about found family, and I loved it. It was just so whimsy. It just reminds me of having a beloved author and then making that connection, and I just really loved it. I gave it 5 stars. It was delightful. I want to read her other books so badly, but I'm gonna save it for one day when I need a pick-me-up, because her books are just so heartwarming and so heartfelt. So 5 star. If you haven't read it, please do. If you want mysteries with characters you can care about, again, pick it up, because I had such a fun time. Definitely my highlight of the month. It may even make my best books of the year. So and then the next book that I read is a new book. I've been trying to get better at reading books as they come into my collection. So I picked up Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. This was just a random book. A lot of these towards the end, I only had one prompt, and this prompt was so hard to do, so I just kept waiting for one to kind of pop. And this one did. So this is a thriller. I probably should have listened to it, because I normally do read my thrillers, listen to my thrillers, I mean, but it follows a main character named Lucy, and she is basically accused of murdering her best friend. She can never prove it, but she's basically they think she killed her best friend. And then a podcast comes to kind of uncover what happened. She goes back to town and she's kind of uncovering what happened to her best friend, and she's working with kind of these podcasters. It was a quick read. It was really quick. Again, with thrillers, I don't always feel that connected to the characters, but I had a fun time. I definitely do recommend the audiobook. I think that listening it made it a little bit dry, but I think from what I've heard, the audiobook is the way to go. So I did have a fun time with it. It wasn't my favorite thriller of all time, but also I felt somewhat connected to the characters. So for this month, I think that's a solid win. And then the next book that I read was another thriller, which I did not have the best results with, I'll be a little bit honest, and that is No One Can Know by Kate Alice Marshall. I will attach a photo here. So this was a book that I had high hopes with. Sorry, I just took her out. Oh, she's listening. Okay. Puppy kisses. I appreciate you. Okay. But I had high hopes going in. I have liked other stuff by Kate Alice Marshall. I was hesitant to read her first book because I think I knew what the true crime case was, and I was like, I probably can predict it if I know it. This one I think had elements of a lot of different true crime cases. I just could not stand the characters, and that's kind of what my thing was. I didn't like the characters. I didn't care about them. The plot was okay. It wasn't shocking in any way. And a lot of the characters, I just hated them all. So this book follows a character who winds up finding out she's pregnant, and her husband wind up going back to her mansion where her parents were killed in, and they kind of uncover what happened to her parents. And it was okay. I think I gave this one 2 stars. It just didn't wow me. Again, I need to have characters that I like in a book, or the mystery needs to keep me going, and the mystery didn't keep me going, and the characters weren't that captivating. So that's why I didn't love this book as much as I was hoping. So that's where we are with that one. I'm sorry about that. I still want to read more books by her in the future. I like her middle grade. I want to read more of her middle grade, but this book just did not work for me. The next book I read was my last official prompt for Magical Readathon, and this was read a book with a certain number of titles. I think I eventually got 11, and I read Breeze Moore's The Quill and the Vial. I wound up picking this up from a Kickstarter, and again, you could tell why these editions, because she like was upset about them, and that's why she sent them out. Like she said they weren't the best quality, they had a lot of issues, and now that I actually read it, I can see it. It's like all fading, you know, there's other stuff happening. So, but it was a fun read. It was definitely more cozy fantasy. Would not say this is a romance, but you basically follow a main character named Jace. And she winds up surviving some war. Her brother did not. And she winds up having plant magic, which means she could speak to plants. So she winds up having to go on a quest to kind of figure out what's happening, figure out what is happening in her world. And she winds up teaming up with a scholar. There really is no romance in this book. And a lot of it was... I think the pacing in the story was the way the story was written. I struggled with a little bit because it made the story feel like I was like being like I was reading a movie, but it wasn't a movie. The story wasn't that memorable. The characters weren't that memorable, but it was also very like repetitive. So I didn't love it as much. And I love earth magic. I love plant magic. So I just struggled with this one just a little bit. So I didn't love it as much. I have a really, really pretty edition. But I just didn't love it. I really would like to read the sequel of this story soon and see how I feel about it. It's not even out yet. But if you like something, a cozy read with a cozy storytelling, definitely a story that tries to do two different things, I would pick it up. But there's no romance in this, like, at all, just as a preference. Cassie, stop. Sorry, my dog is biting me. Cass, can you just leave it alone? Oh my goodness, sorry. Cass, sorry. She is very excited in the evenings when I get home from work. She also went to the park all day and she's probably like overtired, but she keeps wanting to do things and I want to film this video. So don't think I'm neglecting her. She's in the cage. She's okay. But the next book that I read was a little bit of a disappointment, which is so sad because I have a stunning edition from Owl Crate, like so pretty. So I picked up Your Blood, Mine Bones by Kelly Andrew. This book was all vibes, like such a pretty book, like stunning book from Owl Crate. I wish I loved it more because I probably would have kept it. But my rule for my special editions is if I don't love it, they go bye-bye. Because then I don't feel like I'm wasting shelf space. So this, I feel like reading the note in my Owl Crate book made me less angry at the story. Because what this story is you have a main character whose dad died and he kind of runs this mansion. The main character... I think it's Wyatt. She winds up going back to kind of shut down her father's estate and do things, and she winds up connecting with two people from her past, and she starts to uncover secrets about their identities and stuff like that. The note made the story make more sense, but I felt so disconnected from the characters, and there was two main characters that we got their point of views, but because of the way the story was told, I felt like I was only getting one character's point of view, and that made the story a bit of a struggle for me. But if you're looking for an atmospheric story that's very, very creepy, gory, I would pick it up, but the characters and the plot didn't really work for me, unfortunately, so I only gave it 3 stars, unfortunately. And the last book that I finished in the month of April was The Head Witch of Fox Hall by Anna Bright. I ended the month on a pretty big upturn. I gave this book 4 stars. This was a new YA fantasy that I picked up, and I liked it. I thought that it was a fun book. I like the characters. It just... I felt like I didn't understand the world building for a lot of this story. And at the end, I think we got a little bit more uncovering of what this was. But I think because she didn't do that in the story, like there wasn't a whole lot of world building. I felt like she relied a lot on like prior knowledge that I didn't necessarily have. So the story to me felt a little bit disconnected. So you basically follow 3 characters, which I love a 3 point of view story. I really do like the characters in the story. But you basically follow, oh god, they all have weird names too. Fionn, who is a hedge witch that's kind of gets encapsulated with these 2 princes to kind of save their kingdom. That's all you really need to know. And they have interconnections throughout the story. I just did not feel like the world and the plot made a ton of sense. But I did like the characters and it was a quick, captivating read. That is why I gave it 4 stars, but I struggled a little bit with the world building. I also DNF'd The Simple Art of Flying by Corey Leonardo. I'm so upset because Mamie's Bookish Life, this was like her favorite book of the month. I just felt like I wasn't connecting with the characters, and I really very rarely read middle grade contemporary. It's just not my type of book. But this one I wanted to because it had such an interesting premise, but I wound up DNFing it. So yeah, that is my somewhat simple April wrap-up. I'm sure it will be longer than my normal videos because it's all the books that I read. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you read this month. I would love to know, what was your favorite book? If I had to choose, I had slim pickings. I would probably say ASAP and The Wishing Game. I would love to know yours in the comments, and I'll talk to you guys soon.